killed at those militarized hubs, desperate, starving people who, are risking everything to feed their families, and they're being met with bullets. It's one of the great indignities, the great tragedies of this situation, is that they're so desperate, so miserable, so hungry, and they're willing to run those risks, and then they're being killed in the process of finding food. It's desperate.
There's been a concerted campaign, as you'll be all too aware, to discredit the United Nations, to say that you're part of the whole propaganda machine from the Palestinian side, that a lot of the stuff that the United Nations says is simply untrue, and so on. What's your response as a senior member of the United Nations? What's your response to this campaign of attack against the integrity of the UN?
Well, we call out Hamas. We condemn Hamas for what they did on October the 7th. We condemn them for holding hostages. We call for those hostages to be released. We call for a ceasefire. But we also have to say what we're seeing on the ground. And it's that the Israeli authorities and their allies don't like. And that's why we get this attack. It's playing the man or the woman, not the ball. But it's a sideshow, really. What really matters is whether or not we can get in there and save the lives of as many survivors as possible. We're used to this. We get abuse almost everywhere we work. Someone once said that, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be equally hated by all sides. And sometimes it feels like that, but it's not about us. It's about getting that aid into those civilians.
And just in practical reality, the IDF has announced it will implement daily 10-hour pauses in military operations from 10 in the morning to 8 p.m. local time in 3 populated areas. A, is that going to make a big difference to you? And B, obviously there's been this rival aid distribution service that's been up and running now for a few weeks. It seems amid total chaos, with one of the former contractors, who was a former American serviceman, saying he'd never seen such an appallingly run operation, or one where there was such a indiscriminate treatment of civilians. How do we get to a place where the United Nations can do its job and get its food in? And how does that work? How's that going to happen?
So we just need those borders open so we can get those convoys moving. We've got the food, the medicine at the border ready to go. We need a much less onerous process of permits and restrictions. I have visas cancelled of my staff who are meant to be coordinating the aid delivery because they speak out about what they're seeing. But, as you say, we have had this announcement in the last couple of days, and I've got to stay glass half full here. I've got to try to find the positives and hope that that does result in a difference on the ground. So I welcome that announcement, that evidence that there will be more secure corridors for our aid and humanitarian pauses. I really hope that we see those. We're starting to see some improvements. Yesterday, we had 12 out of our 16 convoys cleared for movement, which is much better than usual. But we'll judge it by results. We must be judged by results. Can we save as many lives as we can in the conditions that are there? But we'll also judge the Israeli authorities too by how much support they give us on that. I think it's important to say that there are these extremist hardline voices in the Israeli cabinet, but there are also many people, including in the Israeli military, who do want this aid to get through. And this morning I was talking to survivors in Nir Oz, the kibbutz that was hit, one of the many on October the 7th, where 1 in 4 people were killed or taken hostage. And they were telling me they want the aid to get through. So there's a lively debate inside Israel. People are saying, let us do our job, let us in. As for these other mechanisms, and you mentioned the Gaza humanitarian facility, we don't want anyone to fail. Anyone who can get food through, we welcome that. But we want them to do that, and we wish they would do that in a principled, neutral, humanitarian way, and not in a way that dehumanizes civilians, that forces them to move, to be displaced, or puts them at risk. And over 1,000 civilians have been killed in those queues waiting for food. We know how to do this. I run operations all over the world: Sudan, Afghanistan, Yemen, Haiti, DRC. I've just come back from Goma in the DRC. We know how to do this at scale. We just need people to let us work.
The ups and downs of the economy can be stressful and worrying. One of the smartest ways to protect your savings is with diversification. And you can start by talking to the expert at Birch Gold Group. Gold's value has surged 40%
Should let him. I should listen to this entire thing since I am covering his stream. You know what? Fine. Let's get this. Make his money.
Or a 401k into a tax sheltered gold IRA. Just text my name, Piers, to the number 989898, and Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, only useful information. With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, Birch Gold lets you take control of your savings today. Text the word Piers, that's P-I-E-R-S, to 989898. Finally, Tom Fletcher, what is your direct message to Prime Minister Netanyahu, who said overnight there is no starvation in Gaza?
Well, if you'll let me have a message for Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump. I mean, for Prime Minister Netanyahu, there is starvation. He'll be reading the reports of that from his officials, and we can help stop that. That starvation is doing immense damage to Israel's reputation. The world is demanding that it ends, and we can help solve that problem. We can stop that starvation. We know how to do this. Just let us do our work. And to President Trump, who's been very clear about those levels of starvation, including during his visit to the UK over the last couple of days, he wants that starvation to end. He wants the food to get through. We can deliver that for him. And ultimately, President Trump is someone who talks a lot about peace, and I believes instinctively in peace. There are a lot of Nobel Prizes out there. There is no tougher job than the Middle East peace process, than making peace between Israel and the region. And let's not just announce the results of peace, let's actually work for them as well. And if we do that, and we can help that process, we can support it, then he'll be a great, great peacemaker, and he'll do what recent presidents have failed to do. I hope he succeeds.
Yeah, so do I. Tom Fletcher, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Piers.
Well, joining me now is Major Doran Spielman. He's the former spokesman for the IDF and author of When the Stones Speak. Major Spielman, thank you very much indeed for coming back to Uncensored. You were just listening to Tom Fletcher there, the United Nations aid chief. What is your response?
Is that my
I think
background?
it's tragic, Pierce. Watching your show, seeing you softball questions to Tom, who's a known virulent anti-Israel player. This is the same guy, maybe who was even on your show, that screamed to the world 14,000 babies are going to die in 48 hours, and then apologized and walked it back because of a lack of proof. This is the same guy that was UK ambassador, as you know, to Lebanon from 2011 to 2015, oversaw Hezbollah's growth in Lebanon as a terror organization, and then said he thought they should be a part of the government and they shouldn't be marginalized. This is a person who's overseeing this humanitarian agency and acts like all of a sudden they can't bring aid to people. You and I both seen the videos. There are thousands of tons of United Nations aid that are sitting directly at those crossings as we speak today. There are dozens of videos out there, and they are rotting for one reason. They refuse to accept that aid as long as Israel works through the Gaza Humanitarian Fund. They have refused. If they really care, if he cares about the tragic starvation in Gaza, he should be looking towards the air, the water, Israel, the United States, the UN. But he comes on here and he says, oh, we want everyone to work. They flat out publicly refused. The United Nations publicly refused last week to work with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, meaning they would rather have Gaza people die of horrible starvation than give up their political angles of trying to marginalize Israel and allow the food to actually reach those people. So that is the situation with Tom Fletcher. I think if Sinwar had a portrait on his wall, it would be of Tom Fletcher. He's doing Sinwar's job for him, and Sinwar's laughing in the grave because this is, Pierce, his fantasy come true. He predicted the show. He predicted the interview of you softballing Tom and now asking me difficult questions because he knew one thing. He knew he could count on the UN as his queen, no matter what Israel does. Israel moves the Gaza population out of the way. And here Tom Fletcher says 88% of all people have been displaced. They weren't displaced. They were moved by Israel at cost to Israeli soldiers' lives out of the way of a war zone because we want to keep them safe. He knew he could count on the UN because Tom Fletcher and his buddies, before October 7th, for the 8 years before October 7th, passed 154 condemnations in the General Assembly against Israel. Against all other countries combined, they passed 70. So Israel's apparently worse than Rwanda, than what happened in Cambodia, than Russia's invasion of Ukraine. They were the worst on earth. Otherwise, perhaps they're simply anti-Israel. So you'll forgive me and the Israeli people if we are slightly have a little bit of scrutiny against Tom and the United Nations, and we can show that the aid is on the border. And if they would bring it to the people instead of politically engaging, we could help solve some of the hunger, the desperate hunger that is taking place in Gaza.
I don't think actually that the Israeli government cares about the plight of Gazans at all. The reality is, so far, about 70% of Gaza has been completely destroyed. The remaining population have been herded around now into ever smaller pockets of what is remaining there. You've got people like Smodrich, hard right members of the government, openly talking now about cleansing Gaza of Palestinians, which would be ethnic cleansing. He wants to kick them all out of the country. Then I hear Israelis say, well, he doesn't speak for the government. He's the bloody finance minister. Of course he does. And so you've got people like this saying, well, yeah, we're going to cleanse Gaza of all Palestinians. And then I get people on like yourself, and you come on and you say, no, that's not the plan. No, we just want to help the Gazan people. And the last thing we want to do is kill innocent people and so on. And yet somehow you've managed to kill over 60,000 Palestinians, having lost 1,200 on October the 7th, a horrendous terror attack, which I've condemned from the moment it happened. You've now killed 60,000 plus Palestinians. You've got 20,000 children who've been killed. You've now got starving and emaciated children, images being beamed to the world on an hourly basis, many of whom are now beginning to die literally of hunger. And this is started by a 3-month blockade, deliberate policy of a blockade, starving the innocent Gazans of food and water and aid and other things. And you put it all together, and you now have almost the entire world looking at Israel saying, what on earth are you doing? When are you going to stop this? And yet still, and I say this with respect to you, still people like you will come on, Major Spillman, and you'll say there's nothing to see here. There's nothing that can be reported because you won't allow media to go and investigate this independently. Nothing to see here. We are doing everything by the book. We're the most moral army in the world. And actually anyone like the United Nations, who I thought spoke very eloquently and very straightforwardly about the problem and made it clear he doesn't want to be remotely partisan here. But when I couple what he said with what British doctors are talking about in the few remaining hospitals, where they're talking about children being used as target practice. Now, I would love to see a proper investigation into that, because that was said on British national television, that children were coming in with patterns of clusters of sniper fire, as if they've been used as target practice. Right? So, yeah, you can come here and you can attack the United Nations. You can say they're the villains. You can blame Hamas for everything. But my final point to you, Major Spillman, about your big, lengthy diatribe there about me, about United Nations and everything else, is you quote Sinwar and talk about this is what he wanted. Actually what he wanted when he did what he did on October the 7th is lure Israel into a response that was so wholly disproportionate, it would alienate Israel from the rest of the world. And that is what's happening. And that's what you don't see is happening, because you are so convinced of your moral right here that you do not see the wood for the trees. And I say that as somebody who supported Israel for many months. As you know, to my personal cost, I was attacked virulently from the other side. But there comes a point when Israel's friends, those who've always supported Israel, have to stand up and say, enough of this carnage. It is getting you nowhere. You're not dismantling Hamas. You're not getting hostages freed. You've got starving kids now dying on a daily basis. Enough. So that's my response to you.
Pierce, I hear one lack of a word that comes out of your mouth with this entire statement, and I can agree with you that there's hunger in Gaza, which is Hamas. You throw out the word Sinwar. You blame Israeli opinion on Smotrich. I have news for you. The Israeli people are not defined by Smotrich, and the Israeli people do not all want to raise the white flag and go home. This is a consistent theme where Smotrich wants to cleanse Gaza and every Israeli just wants to fold the white flag. No, there's another alternative, which is I'm not willing to go to sleep, and neither would you, Pierce, with Hamas remaining in Gaza. And you are correct. Sinwar planned this. His queen, his bet was the international media and the United Nations. He knew Israel will move the population. They'll be blamed for displacement. Israel will try to feed the population. And when Hamas steals the food, Israel will be blamed for the food. He predicted every single thing that's happening. Israel could have ended this conflict by bombing this from the sky. We did not need to drop telegrams to everybody there. We didn't need to move the population. We lost 4 soldiers today. They never had to die. They didn't need to go into a tank. We could have taken care of everything from the air. The only reason we did not, and we know where our hostages are, there's plenty of other areas where Hamas is hiding, is because we are trying in the most difficult situation, a situation that no one has ever fought in, to kill Hamas that is planned in advance to hide behind their own people, knowing they don't care about those lives, knowing that when they die, I will go on Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan will say, Israel doesn't have a chance. You can't defeat Hamas. They've recruited 5 times the people. These are not true. Hamas is on its last legs. Its leadership has been completely destroyed. Israel, as you said, have taken over 77% of the territory and moved their civilian population, which is remarkable, to an area that's not perfect, but is mostly out of the way of the fighting. And you have humanitarian aid that Hamas steals from trucks. And when Israel tries to fix the situation, all of a sudden the UN says, no, we're willing to go in there, we're willing to work, but it's so disorganized. Where the hell were you for 21 months when Hamas stole the trucks? There's no proof, by the way. That report that USA took out is a complete farce. It is based on what they said. They cannot verify the recipients of the aid, meaning the aid is going to people and they cannot verify who they are. So if those people are Hamas, they can't verify it. The 60,000 people that you say that have been killed, that we both know that doesn't differentiate between combatants and civilians. Pierce, it's the exact same discussion again and again. And once again, everything negative about Israel. We're the only democracy in this Israel. We're fighting for our lives against an enemy 2 miles away. And all you can do is bring Tom Fletcher, talk about everything that Israel's doing. Now you supported Israel for years, but when the going is getting tough, you'll look back in 20 years when the smoke clears, and you will see that you turned, unfortunately, you misunderstand Israel today. You misunderstand the will of our people, and you would never leave your own family on the border with Hamas on the other side. That is the bottom line.
Actually, I'll tell you what I think I'll wake up to in 20 years' time, the way things are going, if no one stops Netanyahu and his far-right government, is we're going to see Palestinians have been removed from Gaza completely. We will see that there has been an ethnic cleansing that happened as the world stood by and watched. And the reason I believe that now is because I'm listening to people like Smotrich, who is one of the most senior members of that government and cannot be as readily dismissed as so many like to on the pro-Israeli side. And you're also seeing what is happening on the ground, where, as you say, 77% of territory has now been destroyed. I mean, literally obliterated. And this is why Israel doesn't want to allow journalists in to see the sheer scale of what has happened, because then it would be apparent to the world what has actually gone on here. And there's only one reason why government like Israel in this kind of situation doesn't want journalists on the ground operating independently, because they know they're doing stuff they don't want the world to see. Because when it suits Israel, when they wanted to take the world's media to see some food trucks the other day, oh, no problem. In you come. When after October the 7th, they wanted the world to see the horrors of the kibbutz, quite rightly, no problem. In you come. But when it comes to journalists every single day, people I know, great, brave war correspondents from CNN, BBC, Reuters, and others, when they make all their applications to be allowed to do their job in Gaza, no, 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 no. 1 or 2 friendly people who are very pro-IDF are allowed to go in for a few hours with the IDF and write very positive things about what they see. But you are not allowing, well, not you, but the Israeli government is not allowing independent journalists to do their jobs because they don't want the world to know what they're doing. And that's what's going to happen in 20 years' time. It will turn out, I believe, and I hate the fact that this is almost certainly what's going to happen, there will have been an ethnic cleansing of the Gazans. They will no longer, if this carries on, be in Gaza. And there will be widespread evidence of war crimes, including how did 20,000 children die? Is it true that children were being used as target practice by the IDF? As a British doctor said on British national television 3 days ago, literally used for target practice. Now, I'm sure if we ask the IDF
So fucking easy. Just let the journalist in.
about that, they'll say,
So easy.
we're launching an investigation. We're launching an inquiry. Actually, this doctor sounds like he's pro-Hamas. Actually, blah, 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 blah. The same thing that is said every time, because journalists aren't allowed in to verify either way. And when you block the journalists, you block the truth.
You know, Pierce, you're talking about the Gazan population and ethnic cleansing. Do you think that if a Gazan wants to leave Gaza and go to, I don't know, London or Brooklyn, should they be allowed to?
I think Gazans should be allowed to stay in Gaza.
Yes.
Don't you?
Okay, we both think Gazans should be able to stay in Gaza, but if they want to leave the war zone, you're not answering my question. They want to go to England. They want to go to, should they be allowed or should they be forced to stay in Gaza?
So you're saying that Gazans right now can get on a plane to England, eh?
I'm saying that if you believe that they have the right, Pierce, to make a decision about their future, then all the countries around the world who care about these people, care about the starvation, should open their doors, and we should leave it up to the Gazan people. No one is forced to leave Gaza. If you go to the border and you say, I ask, just like if you decide to go to France tomorrow and go on a trip, I would like to relocate my family, should they be allowed to relocate?
Of course they should. They should be allowed the exact same human rights as you or me. Now, do you agree that Gazans should be entitled to the same human rights as you?
I do. Unfortunately, at this point in time, they're in the line of fire. But I do believe that if they want to,
like, imagine saying that. Imagine being a police officer and you're shooting at somebody and they accidentally hit a kid and you kill him. And your response is, well, unfortunately, the kid was in the line of fire. You know the kid's there, but you're still shooting anyways, just to get to the one person, just to get to the bad guy. Now, I imagine that would not fly well. I don't think it would fly well at all.
like
But what about before October the 7th?
Not be forced
But what
that way. I
about
just
before
wanna make a
October?
distinction.
Hang on. Before October the 7th, did Palestinians have the same human rights as Israelis?
They live in their own area. The reason that of course they did, they voted in their own leadership, which was Hamas, meaning the Germans voted in Hitler. I know you don't like these comparisons. They voted in Hitler. Hitler took control. He eliminated their rights. He eliminated many of them. He eliminated homosexuals and Jews and people with physical handicaps and the Romas. Just like that, the Gazan people had free and open elections. Unfortunately, and we don't like to talk about the elephant in the room, they voted overwhelmingly in 2007 for Hamas, and they condemned their children. Meaning, what was Hamas? What were they thinking Hamas was doing all of these years? When Hamas were digging tunnels, not underneath their homes, I've been there, into their homes, into their children's bedrooms. You've seen the pictures. When they indoctrinated their children and brought them into schools and taught them hatred of England, of the West, of Israel. What did these parents think that Hamas was actually doing? They knew the day would come that they voted in Hamas and they would get what Hamas believes, which is a Muslim Brotherhood ideology of the destruction of Israel, fight to the end, Israel will respond, there'll be travesty, I'll go on Piers Morgan, he'll defend them, and hopefully because of the travesty of this population, they'll get a state, which is exactly what France is proposing to do, which simply emboldens this type of terror around the world.
Well, I don't agree, because I think that Palestine should be a state. I believe in a two-state solution. I don't think Benjamin Netanyahu has ever wanted that. And you talk about who is to blame for the rise of Hamas. Well, look no further than the Prime Minister of Israel, who was personally very instrumental in funneling billions of dollars to Hamas because he wanted to have a rule of divide and rule between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. You know, so there'll be lots of blame.
What did you just say?
I agree with you there.
So we can agree on that.
Anything that was done to keep Hamas in power.
That everything else you said prior was just fucking bullshit. You need to take all that energy, all this bad negative juju, and take it right back to Bibi Netanyahu because he's the reason that this is the monster that he created.
Was a horrific mistake. We released Gilad Shalit. When they released Gilad Shalit, we released 1,300 killers, one of which was Yahya Sinwar. It was a horrible mistake. Giving the money to Hamas in retrospect was a horrific mistake. Can you and I both agree that Hamas being in power in Gaza is absolutely intolerable?
100%. And I would also go further and say I have no problem with you comparing Hamas to the Nazis. I think they have a very similar ideology, particularly towards Jewish people. They claim, I've heard people on the Palestinian side say that there's no religious element to this or ethnic element to it. It's simply that they have a problem with the Israeli occupation. But that's simply not true. The original Hamas charter was wedded to killing Jews. They never made any secret about this. So I've got no problem with the analogy of a despicable terror organization to the Nazis. I think they do represent an existential threat. The question becomes, for Israel, as the only democracy in the Middle East, does it want to descend to the same levels of inhumane depravity as the people it's trying to eliminate? And I would argue, as somebody who considers myself to be a friend of Israel and Israelis, no, you shouldn't. You should not be in a position now where you are starving children to death. That is simply not what you should do in response to a terror group who does exactly that to its people. You should be better than Hamas. You should be more humane than Hamas. You should show the world that Israel is a better, more humane country than a Hamas-run Gaza Strip for the Palestinians. But at the moment, you're not. You're sending the world the opposite message. And so friends like me and allies like France and the UK and others, even Donald Trump today, directly contradicting Netanyahu. He said there's no starvation. He said, well, the children look pretty hungry to me. They look pretty hungry to all of us. So, you can say that black is white and white is black and everything else till the cows come home. We all know what we're seeing with our own eyes. And we're seeing starving people. And we're seeing starving people getting shot dead. And I just simply say to you, as somebody who, given we both care about the security of Israel and the security of Israeli people, why do you think that any of this possibly makes it more secure to be an Israeli or to be a Jew around the world? Why does making Israel
Yada, yada, yada.
Last thing, I'll say that, I think Destiny had said at some point, he had clarified that essentially people who use the label of socialist should be treated like Nazis. I take that to mean that they should be very harshly socially excluded from the broader movement of the Democratic Party or the broader left. But I think that would be extremely counterproductive because, again, these are just a big chunk of the people of the Democratic Party. I think I get accused of wanting to shrink the tent because I want to primary pro-filibuster senators, right? on ideological grounds. But I think to say that we should shun basically everyone that calls themselves a socialist in the Democratic Party, that's to say that we should shun essentially 10% of the base, which is, I don't know, I just think that's much more counterproductive than just trying to build a coalition with them.
Okay, thank you, and we will get into it as we go. I'm going to hand the mic next to Pisco. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it obviously depends on what you mean by court and what you mean by the far left. So obviously, I would be in support if by far left you mean people like Mamdani, people like AOC, these kinds of people who identify, Bernie Sanders as a socialist. I think that there are absolutely things that we can agree on with socialists, and we're a big tent enough coalition if what you mean by far left includes those people. But ultimately, this is a conversation I think about semantics. What is the far left? Who are the group of people who are anti-liberal or anti-constitutional that you want to exclude? And to what extent do you want to exclude them? Does exclude mean invite them, don't invite them to create a party platform? Does exclude mean not interact with them in any respect? Even as Econoboy mentioned, to use their platform either for a debate or to promote the candidacy or to try to convince people. I don't know if I'll go that far. I certainly wouldn't want to incorporate any Marxist-Leninist ideas into the Democratic platform if that's what's being meant by courting the voters or courting the far left. So ultimately, it's a semantic argument, but we're not here for that. We're here because, in my opinion, there's been a bad faith campaign to basically smear me and Econoboy and Josiah as having moved to the far left, as having put space in our coalition to really allow for anti-democratic, anti-constitutional ideas and to not push back on them. And I think what you'll find that there are tensions right now, I think, in the different coalitions, the different viewer bases, but they don't have to do with a big substantive disagreement. I encourage everyone who's watching, actually look during the course of this conversation, how much disagreement substantively is there going to be? If we're talking about this semantic game about what a socialist is a socialist a Nazi? Stephen is going to just fucking get crushed on that argument by Econobo in terms of what a normal person means by the term socialist and how those terms are used. If he can produce any evidence whatsoever that me, Econoboy, or anyone on Live and Learn did something wrong in bringing on the vanguard, notice if he can bring up anything that shows that we are taking a kind of illiberal approach or trying to do some kind of bad faith, a courting of the tanky vote. if he can point to any specifics, or are we really just going to have more fucking nitpicking on the sides while he encourages and frankly, I think smears us as tankies, anti-liberal, and anti-constitutional. So I'm here definitely to get clarity on terms and to notice actually what is the room of substantive disagreement here, or is all of this a fugazi to cover up spite and personal conflict between him and other streamers? And is there really evidence that we're moving to the tanky left or the illiberal left?
Okay, well, thank you for being here, and I'm sure we'll get into all of that. Let's give it first to counterpoints. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my issue with this whole thing is that there are socialists, which I define, I think, in a good faith way, for the decommodification of basic human need and workers owning the means of production. There are also communists who believe that the end result of our material analysis should be a moneyless, stateless, classless society. I think these people exist. I think they have clout. I think they have influence. And I would use specific examples in our sphere of influence, like Erin or Straight Raid, who says that she's a communist. I would use the examples like Hassan Piker, who I just watched earlier today, is effectively holding hands with Marxist-Leninists and saying that he is a Marxist-Leninist. He's just, playing softy with the Social Democrats and the Democratic Socialists. That way he can get clout and influence and then radicalize them down a funnel. So for me, what I'm trying to point out is that if you pretend that this person is normal and nice and fine and a part of the coalition, then you're going to lose the moderates, you're going to lose the center right, and for every leftist you gain, you probably lose 2 or 3 moderates. So, the Vanguard, I have no idea what their politics are. I would frankly love to speak to them specifically about their politics. But if MLs are a part of the coalition, you're losing people. You're being politically ineffective. That's my argument.
Okay, thank you for being here. And last but certainly not least, Destiny, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that when I was making the rounds debating Nazis in 2016 to 2018, one of the most common things that I heard from kind of like the centrists that basically gave more credence to all of the far right ideas was point to where I support this. Show me where I said that I'm racist. Show me where I said that I hate Jewish people, or I'm anti-Semitic, or I'm, trying to be a white supremacist. And there was always this like annoying fight that I would have to do where in order to start debating the Nazis, I'd have to chew through all of these epic centrists first who would say, well, I'm just a classical liberal. I'm Sargon of Akkad. I'm not actually a white supremacist. I just happen to give cover for all of these people. I don't think Econoboy or Pisco or Josiah or any of these other people, I don't think they're becoming tankies or anything like that. I just think there's a very annoying cover that's given to a lot of these people where there's like, we can 100% discern and decipher every single intention that Donald Trump has. We have no problem calling him a fascist outright. But then when you have people that hate the Democrats, that shit on our candidates, that attack everybody on our side constantly, we're like, well, I don't know what they really think or how they really feel. Or when it comes to people like Hassan, like even earlier today in my subreddit, Econoboy, when asked about supporting Hassan, will say things like, well, I don't think I necessarily agree with him on everything. He says, I don't have a generally positive view of Hassan, and I think I would flatly agree with many of the criticisms levied at Hassan. That's just in my mind, even though it seems like there's some kind of separation there. That's just a wild statement to make from somebody who openly supports terrorist groups that kill civilians, or openly supports enemies of the United States, or openly supports the subversive propagandizing of our entire political party to hijack the entire movement to destroy if not the Democratic Party, maybe even all of the entire United States of America. So I'm sure we'll get into it. I don't think it behooves us to just say all of this is a semantic disagreement. I think it's actually really important to define what a leftist is, because I think that it's important for the people to know where everybody stands, and it's important to get rid of people that are intentionally trying to obscure their beliefs and come in under the guise of being a leftist without actually stating, what their position is, and then having this like this dual role that they get to play where they can propagandize people and radicalize them without actually ever stating what it is they're trying to do. Are you for the complete and total abolition of our democracy, or are you just somebody who wants the government to do more stuff?
And just to get clarity, so we know what we're talking about, Destiny, are you saying that Econoboy and Pisco are running cover for those leftists that you think are infecting the Democratic Party, or however you want to put it, right?
Yes, but I don't think it's like they're secretly tanky and so they want to provide cover for their tanky friends. I think it's more just like this, there's something that happens in the Democrat brain, and I've been guilty of it too, where you're so obsessively trying to seem like even-handed that you get rooted out in this world where you're like, I'm trying to be fair and I don't want to have like Hassan derangement syndrome, so I'm just going to say, they're not that bad and I don't know that much about any of this, I'm not sure, whatever. But what it happens, what it causes is this reality where the conversation for this podcast, what was talked about earlier, was should we appeal to leftists when it comes to gaining political power? When do leftists talk about appealing to liberals to try to gain political power? Or when do leftists say, hey, maybe we should chill on shitting on the party, forever and ever when it comes to getting political power? Like, why is the conversation only ever on the Democratic side of things? That's just very wild to me.
Okay. The floor is open.
Like
Go ahead.
facts.
Some
I was gonna say
socialists.
they do.
Anyway,
They say
I
they're
have a
co-opting
question.
movement.
Please go.
I have a question. Yeah. So this is both to Connor and to Stephen. Should some socialists, at least some, be catered to, be appealed to, and be part of the coalition?
No.
So you would agree, therefore, that Bernie Sanders, AOC, and Mamdani should not be catered to and part of the coalition, correct?
Depends on what you mean when you say catered to.
Should they,
for
example,
instance,
should we support the head of the ticket being a socialist like AOC, Mamdani, if they are the nominees, should we support them?
Yes, but that doesn't mean you're catering.
Yeah, that's just a fucking difference between catering and supporting somebody. Catering to me is like literally, let me cater to you because baby, this is your day, and all that other bullshit. Supporting somebody is completely different from catering to them. Catering is kissing their fucking
to
ass.
socialism.
So, okay, but you understand.
Wait, hold on,
so
wait. You recognize that
God.
supporting somebody at the top of a ticket. Well, if you want to play the yes or no question, I can play the same game. You understand that supporting somebody being at the top of the ticket doesn't mean that you are centrally supporting their ideology. For instance, it's possible to cater to, in a roundabout way, people that are further to the left of you without catering to far leftist beliefs, right?
Correct, but you would agree, like, if a socialist is at the top of a ticket, socialist like Bernie Sanders, the Democratic Party should support the socialist at the top of the ticket, correct?
It depends what you mean by support, but generally, yeah, I think you should support who's
Okay,
assuming
so
they're
you're
like,
okay
but
with socialists being part of the coalition, correct?
I don't really know if I consider Bernie Sanders or AOC to be like socialists.
And why is that exactly?
Because I don't think that they like fit under conventional definitions of socialism. It's more kind
They
of like
want the decommodification of basic human needs and workers
yeah,
owning the means of production.
Yeah, so that's your definition. That's your proprietary definition of socialism.
That's
but you agreed.
most
hang on.
socialist definition.
So, for example,
do you disagree with my definition?
Yeah. Okay. So just to hop in here. So yeah, I disagree
You don't.
that is. Okay. Do you want me to answer the question, Connor?
Give Econoboy space
Okay.
to answer. Go ahead, Econoboy.
So
I want you to do a line of
Okay.
Adderall.
let Econoboy answer. Go ahead.
What the fuck?
I probably should have done an edible instead of Adderall before entering this debate. But to answer your question, similar to capitalism, socialism is a diverse universe of people. There's a lot of people who call themselves socialists. Some of them are Marxist-Leninists. Some of them are like what you might call like moderate, like right-wing socialists, I guess like me, who say that we should just collectivize the ownership of production. People have different ways of defining these things. For instance, capitalism includes people all the way from Fabian Liberty to people like Destiny, who basically endorses the Nordic model, right? And they're both capitalists, right? And so I think that of the 10% of people who call themselves socialists and are part of the Democratic Party base, obviously that's a very diverse group of people, ranging from the exact, essentially, people that I just mentioned as well. And I think that's a very sensible way to look at who calls themselves socialist and why. To Destiny's point of when
Donnie's not a
I'll just
socialist,
one-
or that Bernie's not a socialist. That's crazy.
Just one more sentence. To Destiny's point about when do like the left wingers ever cater to the moderates? Well, I mean, I seem to remember people like Bernie Sanders and AOC taking very collaborative positions with people like Biden when he was in office. And I seem to recall like Mamdani, he took a very collaborative position with people like Brad Lander. And Mamdani's campaign, to the extent that it appealed to people broader than just the left wing, he made that conscious decision to do that. He didn't run on a campaign of seizing the means of production. He ran on a campaign of like freezing the rent and providing childcare to people, right? I mean, I take that to be in some sense a means to cater to a broader base of people than just left wingers, essentially.
So I think that if we want to talk about catering to socialists, I think that the issue that we have is there exists a world where you only have, or you have a bunch of like Bernie Sanders, AOC, maybe Mamdani types of people that are part of your movement and part of your coalition. And I think that if we lived in a world where there was a rich media environment with a lot of people who were socialists, who, you know, some supported the liberals, some kind of didn't, and some were like really against it, then we could have that conversation. But right now, it seems basically ubiquitous across the entirety of the left-wing media landscape to aggressively and violently shit on and attack Democratic candidates as harshly as possible. I just saw, and I'm sure you guys saw, that Vanguard tweet saying that Pete Buttigieg looked like and smelled like a rat. Pete is one of the the most like popular Democratic figures making the rounds on shows. I just watched Crystal Ball fucking roast the fuck out of a senator from Michigan because she wouldn't give like the singular one answer on the Gazan issue. If this is the world we're going to live in, where you want to say, oh, well, socialism encompasses a broad range of people, but when I look to the media environment, almost every single person that would even flirt with the label socialist relentlessly shits on the Democratic Party. I don't know if I can really say, yeah, sure, we should also appeal to these people. It's just not the right media environment for it.
There's a definitional issue here, which is you're saying that Bernie Sanders and Zoran Mamdani are not socialists. Explain that.
That's not really responsive to anything I just said. So
no, because you were not responsive to the issue at hand, which has to do with the definition. Yeah. So the question is, if you're defining socialism to only include the people that Steven doesn't like, then maybe there's not actually a disagreement here in terms of who like should be leading the party or something.
So I wasn't defining socialism as people I don't like. I was defining socialism. So we can talk about definition of socialism. What I'm looking at right now is the socialist media environment. My earlier argument was that I don't know if I would even consider like Bernie Sanders and AOC to be hardcore socialists. If I wanted to supply that argument,
I didn't say hardcore.
If I
socialist at all.
Sure, socialist at all. Well, right now, who are the socialists all shitting on almost more than anybody else? AOC and Bernie Sanders. So I mean, it seems like
whether
that's
they're
not a great
shitting on
media
them or
environment.
not, Stephen. Whether they're shitting them or not isn't the question. That's a separate question. Are they shitting or not shitting? The question is, should socialists be part of the coalition? You just said that Bernie isn't a socialist. He identifies as such.
So
AOC
to be
is not
clear,
a socialist.
the
She
question-
identifies as such. Mamdani isn't a socialist. She identifies as such. What's your evidence they're not socialists?
So identifying as a political thing doesn't make you that political thing. That's a tautology, and that would be nonsense, number one. And number two, the question wasn't should they be part of the coalition. The question is should we appeal to them. Those are two fundamentally completely different questions.
But Destiny, to be clear though, you're narrowing your position. It was just last night when you said explicitly anyone that uses the socialist label should be treated like a Nazi, right?
In the media environment, in the media environment is what we're talking about. Though I'm commenting on your show.
You clarified then, Destiny. Okay, well that's what you said last night. If you're clarifying just people within the media environment, then I'm just saying that that's a useful narrowing of the discussion.
You can call it a narrowing if you want, but anybody that's watched any, like, I don't shit on AOC, I don't shit on Bernie Sanders even, and I've been supportive of Mamdani for the election.
I think useful is one way to put about it. I think useful is one way to put it. I think Weaselly is another way to put it, and I think it is Weaselly. I think you're backing off of the strong position. The strong position is socialists shouldn't be a part of socialists shouldn't be a part of our fucking coalition. And now when you're getting pushed, I guess now it's the media environment. Now it's but you were
I didn't say socialists shouldn't be part of the coalition. I said we shouldn't be trying to actively appeal to socialists. Do you understand that those are two separate things?
They're different statements. They're correct. They're different statements.
No. They mean fundamentally two completely different things.
They're two different statements that mean different things. They're two different statements that mean two different things. But your position, is it your position, therefore, that the Democrats should, as part of their coalition in terms of who to vote for, what kind of policy support, to humor people like Mamdani, humor people like AOC, and humor people like Bernie Sanders? And if that's the truth, then I think
I don't know what that statement
like
means. Should they humor them? Like, what does that mean? Like, put them on the ballot? Well, I don't know what that question means. Like,
should they have a seat at the table? Whatever you take that.
What is a seat at the table? Like, if they go to the Outback Steakhouse?
That's what I'm asking you.
What does that mean?
That's what they really need to. This is that battle of semantics thing. Semantics is actually important in this type of conversation. That's why I think you do have to literally be semantical for this type of discussion, because they're going to try to figure out what.
For example, you're the one who says that we need to excise these people from the party. I actually don't know what you mean by that. So whatever your vision of having a seat at the table, not being excised is, whatever you're using when you say these people need to be gone, under that definition, do you think? Okay.
Sure. Let's let Destiny. Those are good questions, Pisco, and I'd like to know the answers too. Right? What do you mean, Destiny, when you say we need to excise these people? How do you?
Yeah,
see
my
that
fixation is
playing out?
almost universally on the media environment when I'm having these conversations. I think when I was watching you guys talk, it was also generally on although sometimes you guys would try to go back to AOC, but like politicians operate kind of in a different world than the media environment operates in. Most of my criticism on the media environment that all calls themselves like leftists or socialists seem to relentlessly shit on Democrats. And I just think it's a really unhealthy and bad world. Again, where you see a Michigan senator wants to dip her toes into the podcasting world. And one of the jokes I made about Kamala is one of the reasons why she probably didn't do any shows is because she would get fucked by the right, the centrist, and the left, and she goes on a leftist show and she gets fucking shit on because they only want to talk about fucking Palestine. This is a senator from a blue state, from Michigan. Jesus, that's insane to me. And it would be nice if we actually had like a strong center-left position and a strong center-left media apparatus, and not just a bunch of leftists who fucking hate the party and just want to shit on us all day.
Do you understand our position to be that we disagree with your assessment that leftists constantly shit on the Democrats? Do you think that we disagree on that?
I'm not sure all the time. I can't tell.
So you're not sure. So we're here to discuss something where you're not sure if we agree with you on the position that the lefties constantly shit on Democrats in ways we don't like. We agree that lefties constantly shit on Democrats that in ways that we don't like. We agree with Hutch, for example, when they constantly shit on people like Biden in certain ways, even though I shit on Biden in some respects. We agreed on the AOC tweets that they shouldn't have shit on her that way. And so there's no disagreement there. So that obviously isn't what we're here to discuss on a point that where you're unsure that we disagree on.
I wasn't saying that we had I was asserting strongly that we massively disagreed there. So, okay, what was the counterpoint? Sorry.
I got something I massively disagree with. So, okay. I think that every single leftist that I've talked to online, anybody who has any kind of political knowledge whatsoever, defines socialists as decommodification of basic human needs and workers owning the means of production, and they use that definition repeatedly. I think that my frustration is that there are a bunch of quote unquote social democrats who talk about universal health care, or they talk about, making rent cheaper or some shit like that, which are social democratic Scandinavian policies. And I think they're using the term socialism backdoor in order to rehabilitate the image of this. And not just that, Hassan Piker and plenty of far lefties, plenty of MLs, probably the Vanguard as well, they're ecstatic that this is happening. They're ecstatic that Mamdani has social democrat policies. They're ecstatic that AOC have social democrat policies. They're ecstatic that Bernie Sanders have social democrat policies because it rehabilitates the word in my mind. That shift of the Overton window to
or
the
maybe they agree with the policy.
Is an insidious plot by twats to manipulate the Democratic Party.
I'll ask you, Connor, maybe,
and it's going to ruin electoralism.
So we're going to get some actual clarity here. So to be clear, Stephen, you don't disagree that people like Mamdani, AOC, and Bernie, they're fine to be in the party, and we're fine to appeal to the kind of issues that they care about in their positions, correct? You don't have a problem with that?
I would say, hold on.
I'm asking Stephen a question. I'm going to get to you and see if you disagree with Stephen, actually.
Second, I want to say something before you and Destiny talk for the next 40 fucking minutes. What I would say is that if the socialists are proposing social democrat policy, but then they get what they want, and then they try to yank the political window further left, that is something 100% that I oppose. Destiny, you and Pisco, go ahead and fight for the next.
Wait, no, I just want to ask, and I'll ask. I'm going to go to you, Connor, and see if you agree with Destiny, because I think we might all have a more disagreement with you, Connor, than we have within each other in terms of the substantive opinion. So I'm going to ask Stephen, do you have a problem with these people, the people identified, Mamdani, Sanders, AOC, being part of the Democratic coalition, and however you define Democratic coalition, and having their positions catered to, or people having their positions in general as part of the Democratic coalition? Do you have a problem with that?
Okay, so there's two separate questions. So one, like generally, I'm probably almost always going to support a blue candidate over a red candidate in this current media environment, or in this current political environment, number one. But number two, when you say, do you have a problem appealing to them? That means different things. If you say, like, would I have a problem if we were to appeal to Bernie Sanders coming out and saying, I want to socialize all of the means of productions in the United States, I would have a problem with that. But if you're saying, do you have a problem appealing to Bernie and AOC and Mamdani saying, we need to find ways to make, rent cheaper in cities, and that might mean a policy like rent control that I personally don't like, but if they want to try it, I wouldn't be like fundamentally opposed to having that as part of my party's platform. Then no, it would depend on what things we're talking about appealing to.
Agreed. You're okay with the socialist being at the top of the Democratic ticket in the sense of socialist.
But again,
in the Bernie Sanders
this is part of the issue. You call it
correct? Is that right or no?
You can't.
Am I wrong?
This is not like a simple thing. You're like doing like the what is a woman at me? What is a socialist? Like the issue here
I'm
is
asking you. Do you have a problem with Bernie Sanders being at the top of the ticket?
You got to let Destiny.
That's a specific question.
Top of the ticket. No, like if him being a senator from Vermont, no. If he was president, probably not. But when you say a socialist, if you're talking about somebody who wants to abolish by law all of private enterprise and maybe even attack the democratic underpinnings of our political parties, right, and have a single party rule, I would be opposed to that.
But that doesn't describe Bernie. It doesn't describe Mamdani. It doesn't describe AOC.
No,
correct?
But Mamdani, Bernie, and AOC are on the outer perimeter of what is considered socialist, and they're attacked by the center part of what is socialist. That's my issue. You could probably find an outer perimeter fascist that I might be okay with. If he's some fascist who's like, yeah, I think we should protect America as an ethno-state, and I'm defining ethno-state as like the current ethnic composition of America, and I think that we should have like stronger rules on immigration. I was like, yeah, I'd probably fucking support this dude or whatever.
The problem is that, like, and you understand, and Econoboy would lay this out, that Bernie, AOC, these types, they come from a long tradition of democratic socialists from like UK, Australia. He brought up Clement Attlee, and this is not some fringe movement. These are democratic socialists that exist in countries all over the world. So we're not talking about this idiosyncratic belief of of socialism. It's a version of socialism that exists, and you're okay with it being part of the party. So the question isn't one of categorical. You're okay with some socialists. You would vote for some socialists. I'll ask Connor the same question. Connor, are you okay with someone like Bernie Sanders being on the top of the ticket, AOC being on the top of the ticket of the Democratic Party?
No, I would either abstain from voting or I would fucking vote against them. Like, for instance, if there's a moderate Republican compared to AOC or Bernie, not that moderate Republicans exist anymore, but if they existed, I would pick a moderate Republican over AOC or Bernie.
I think the bigger disagreement's between you and Destiny there. I think Destiny's okay with some
to be
socialists
clear,
being a part of the Democratic coalition.
Connor's a Republican, so I would expect him to say that. Yeah, no shit. But voting for somebody is a lot different than appealing to somebody. These are two different things, and we keep playing like this clever game of trying to swap one out for
Where do you think? To describe
hold on,
us.
let Destiny finish his thought.
Well, that's it. No, I'm just saying that like appealing to somebody is a lot different than voting for somebody. I'm guessing if I was in New York and there was a plethora of candidates, Mamdani probably wouldn't be my first choice, but I'd probably vote for him in the primary, or I'm sorry, in the general. But that doesn't mean I would like want to appeal to a socialist or whatever.
But
I
agree
okay,
that
like we have to. I think there's a useful thing to look at what this actually looks like in actually existing politics, right? So in 2016, when Bernie Sanders got 45% of the vote in the primary, something like that. He was involved in the platform committee for the DNC. He was like a main speaker at the DNC in 2016. He was able to extract a lot of concessions to the party. Like, I think that because of him, the party added in marijuana legalization, a $15 hour minimum wage, I think carbon pricing, and I think maybe there was some stuff about the death penalty. I want to say that was something that Bernie Sanders really pushed to add into the Democratic Party platform. You know, and again, that's like a very direct appeal to Bernie Sanders and like an appeal to the unity between the centrists and the socialists and the Democratic Socialists.
No, nothing. What policy there was socialist?
Okay, so
because here's where we're going to run into the problem, because nothing that you just said there was socialist. And there's this game that's played where leftists...
Destiny, you're wrong about that. You're completely wrong.
15 an hour is socialist?
Okay, do you think a progressive income tax is socialist?
Not necessarily, no.
Right. So the Communist Manifesto proposed a progressive income tax, right? So
does that make it a socialist policy?
I would say, generally speaking, that the Communist Manifesto, the manifesto of the Communist Party, like it probably is something of an authority on what it means to be a communist.
The Communist Manifesto is a pamphlet made so that farmers could read it and join a violent revolution against the state. Is that really what we're going by, the defining document of what all, like what, like there are going to be aspects of communism and socialism that are shared by liberalism and democracy.
Oh my God, this is so bad faith. So Econoboy brings up a point. He says, "Is this policy socialist?" And as it's sort of embodied in the Communist Manifesto, and you go a broader point and say, "Well, the Communist Manifesto has this other purpose." That's not the question on the table. That's not the point.
So that's not the point. So the point is that it's not about whether or not we would semantically define something like a progressive income tax as communist or not communist. It's about these broader movements and what their general ideological disposition is on all of the different set of possible positions within the policy debate. So I would agree to your point that like in terms of socialism being the decommodification of labor and also like the collective ownership of the means of production, if that's the way that you define socialism, then obviously these aren't like socialist policies, quote unquote, but that doesn't mean that you're not appealing to like the broader socialist movement and the broader like socialist apparatus of advocacy when you propose things like a $15 an hour minimum wage.
Econoboy, just for clarity, so I understand, you're saying when you say I want to appeal to socialists, you're saying things like, oh, pick policies that socialists would also like.
I'm saying that insofar as socialists and very progressive Democrats are a part of the actually existing base of Democratic voters, they should have some proportional say in things like party leadership positions, committee assignments, the platform of the Democratic Party, fundraising distribution, activist-based organizing, strategic discussions. They should have some kind of proportional say in all of those discussions.
But the problem is those people, if they truly identify as socialists and not just like liberal light or socialist light or whatever we're calling these people, they're not going to be pushing for these outer perimeter things that socialists might agree with when it comes to liberals. So when you say like a $15 an hour minimum wage or like a progressive taxation system, that these are quote unquote socialist policies because they're mentioned in the Communist Manifesto, you don't need communism or socialism to talk about either of those issues. And what I don't like is this weird game that's played where somehow socialists are allowed to know true Scotsman every single good thing that our capitalist liberal society has produced and say, oh, well, you like vacation days? That actually came from socialism. You like minimum wage? That came from socialism. You like labor unions? That came from socialism. socialism, and every bad and shitty thing is ascribed to the capitalist part, despite the fact that that's what's even creating the necessary prerequisite wealth to even have these other things.
Doing the no truth
Wait, Destiny, what does that have to do with? Wait, I don't know what that has to do like at all with what I just said. What I'm saying fundamentally is that I think it's sensible to make policy concessions to the broader socialist apparatus insofar as they're a part of the base. It sounds like you don't even.
We don't have to make a. That's not a
disagree with
policy concession to a socialist.
that.
It's literally
isn't
hold on.
considered as such.
Wait.
It would be
Without,
considered as such.
no, absolutely not. If you got rid
Yes,
of,
it absolutely
if
would.
you got rid of all the socialists, could you still get a 15 an hour minimum wage?
Yeah.
Then it's not a policy
don't-
concession to socialism.
Wait. No. No.
Under really quick, Pisco. Destiny, even under quote unquote liberal economic frameworks, people in my replies are calling countries like the Nordic societies liberal capitalist societies, even though they do quote unquote socialist things as you would just define, like social ownership of the means of production. Like there's a lot of quote unquote socialist policies that those countries have engaged in that people are labeling as liberalism and doing these kind of things. And it's like, whatever, if we want to have narrow definitions of things, that's totally fine with me. But I think that insofar as like the socialist movement, and when we went to the topic of the debate, courting the left, right? Conceding things to the left, the broader left. I include very progressive Democrats in that who might identify as capitalists or might be misaligned in some way. That includes things like broader progressive policies, like, I mentioned the death penalty, minimum wage, things like that as well.
When I say court the left, and when I was designing this topic, maybe I could have been more clear. I'm not talking about issues that both liberals and leftists share. Like, both of them agree that we should treat kids nicely. Both of them agree that we should be kind to our neighbors, things like that. I'm not talking about those things. I'm talking about things that are specifically and uniquely.
So name them.
left.
So name them. So
Well,
if
no,
you're
but,
fine,
like-
if
like,
the only
Commodification of basic human needs and
Holy
workers owning the means of
fucking-
production.
Holy fucking shit. So if
Hassan is a good example, right? The
Hassan isn't a
He is
policy.
great.
Hassan isn't a policy. If you're talking about appealing to people, Econoboy gave you a response. He's talking about things that these people care about, socialists care about. If all you're talking about is people,
No.
Holy
Okay,
shit.
so I'm gonna say something that pisses me off about this conversation. Oh,
pisses me off.
somebody else started talking. I'm gonna roll my eyes. Shut the fuck up, Pisco. Take your eyeballs and fucking shut them the fuck up. Okay. So saying everything good is socialism is dumb as fuck.
No one
okay?
said
Not
that.
what I'm doing, Connor. What are you
we did.
talking
No one
about?
fucking said that,
Hey,
dipshit.
shut the fuck
No
up.
one
I listened
fucking
to you
said that,
blocks for the
dipshit.
past 5 minutes.
Yeah,
Shut the
but we
fuck
didn't
up.
straw
Shut
man the
fuck
shit
up.
out of you,
Shut
Connor.
the
You're
fuck
being
up.
an idiot.
You're a fucking
All right, shut
idiot,
the
dude.
fuck
He
up.
didn't say that. No one said
my
that.
turn. I have the talking stick. Shut the fuck up. Okay. So saying like, oh, a minimum wage is socialist. Progressive taxes is socialist. Firefighters is socialist. Police are socialist. Teachers are socialist. This is the kind of fucking bullshit that is the obfuscation that I'm talking about, where you're basically talking about normie lib governmental policies that are perfectly conducive to a free market fucking state. And you're like, oh, it's just a gradation of the economics. Well, why don't we just go with the right-wing definition of socialism, where socialism is when the government does anything ever whatsoever.
So,
Then at
Connor,
that point,
yeah,
I'm a
You're not
socialist.
listening. You're not
Fucking
listening.
So, Connor,
J.D. Vance is a socialist.
give it to
Everybody's a fucking
Hold
socialist.
on. Give it to Pisco and Econoboy to respond.
Yeah,
Go
so
ahead.
Econoboy specifically didn't say that. I'll let Econoboy do, but you're just not listening. But I want to talk after Econoboy.
So just to be clear, again, I'm grounding everything that I'm saying in the actually existing people that call themselves socialists and call themselves very, very
If there was a
progressive.
good
Now,
policy,
if
we
I
should
could
do
just
it
finish,
regardless of
Connor,
whether
with
you're
all the
listening.
bullshit about interrupting.
listening.
So
No, I heard it.
okay. Well, you interrupted, so just give me a second here. I'm grounding this in the
You lied about
actually
it all.
existing people that call it socialism, that call it whatever, very progressive capitalism or very progressive like policies in general, right? So insofar as you're saying, oh, my narrow definition of socialist policies is decommodification of labor and the socialization of the means of production, then to be fair, according to me and according to some other policies that have been proposed, that is like almost exactly what we would be doing.
Give us an example. Just an
Oh, wait,
example
actually,
of-
wait,
hold on,
real quick.
stop,
No, wait,
stop.
can I ask a
Is there
question just
good
real quick?
example of a policy-
No,
I didn't come here to play
not
the
the wait,
Scotsman
wait.
for fucking
Also, wait, not the
40
policy
minutes.
game. I'm just
That's
curious
not
because
what I'm doing. I'm
wait.
doing the exact opposite.
Okay, wait. Econoboy keeps bringing up like AOC and Bernie Sanders. Can you name somebody in the media environment that identifies as a socialist that is friendly towards the Democratic Party?
Like
I don't know,
like in the
what is that
mainstream
relevant?
media
Anybody
environment,
in the media environment.
Why
in
is
the
that
alternative-
relevant?
I thought that is relevant. I thought that was the sole point. It's
Because
not a-
So you wanna change the
politicians,
conversation?
I don't want to
Point,
change the
this isn't a
conversation
courtroom,
because
you son of a bitch.
politicians have to operate within the very real world of trying to get elected. So necessarily their positions are going to be probably a bit more constrained. And also these are people that, I mean, maybe Connor has, but I don't shit on AOC or Bernie Sanders. That was never what this conversation was ever about, like ever. Like I'm curious, in the media environment, are there any people that identify as socialists that are friendly towards the Democratic Party in the United States of America? A single one.
Why is that relevant to whether or not the
because my
Democrats
main
should...
criticism, I'm telling you, because my main criticism is that you're saying Democrats should appeal to socialists, and you're picking the outer perimeter socialists that are the least socialist people who have won elections by being the least socialist people, saying that the outer perimeter beliefs that we're appealing to are things like a 15-hour minimum wage, which aren't even necessarily socialist policies, when the issue we have is that the central tenets of socialism, like the abolition of all free enterprise, the abolition of all private property, the destruction of the political parties in the United States of America, those are the people that are dominating the media environment. And you're asking us to appeal to those people to capture people like AOC and Bernie Sanders. I'm not worried about the AOCs and Bernie Sanders. I'm worried about the people that worked for Bernie Sanders, like your Brianna Joy Grays, or the people that are running the entire left-wing media online apparatus, which is why I'm asking for a single person who identifies as a socialist that supports the Democratic Party.
So if you're asking for a single person who identifies as a socialist that supports the Democratic Party, there's obviously a lot of those people. I just said those are 10% of the people that vote for Democrats.
Media people.
And I want to make this point because it's relevant to the conversation we're having.
Okay, what's your relevant?
I thought this whole thing was about, I thought that's what this was about. I thought this was about addressing the media, not necessarily the politicians. I thought this was about media. I thought this was about podcasts and kind of political commentators. That's what I thought this was about. I didn't know this was about politicians.
If every time you open your fucking mouth, I go,
you guys are. It's impossible for you guys to linearize because your whole job here is to muddy the waters. When a comment was presented,
I think you're muddying the water. That's exactly what I'm going to accuse you of momentarily. So shut up.
You were brought in. You and Rick are being brought in to give cover to Destiny.
Counter.
I'm gonna offer.
Hold on.
I'm gonna offer clarity.
Stop. Peace, go first, and then you can respond.
So
go ahead.
Clearly, with respect to policies that socialists support, if what we mean by appeal to socialists is to literally propose policies that these types of socialists would support, you guys are okay with them, certain of these policies, right? And we're just now defining what the scope of that agreement is, what the scope of that overlap is, but you don't have a problem in principle with appealing to socialists if by appealing to socialists we mean promoting policies that they like, correct?
Yeah, but that's a meaningless statement.
The policies are good.
Okay, so
well,
wait,
because the question would be, are you okay with appealing to members of the Ku Klux Klan?
They like clean drinking water.
No, wait, let him. Yeah. Like, that's my follow-up. Let's say that you do like city renovations where you have clean drinking water.
So now let's actually talk about the policies and when.
No, you have to answer that question. Would you be okay with having a party that appeals to the Ku Klux Klan?
I'm okay with a party. I'm totally willing to bite bullets. You know I bite bullets. I'm totally willing with a party to appeal to members of the Ku Klux Klan if what is meant by that is appealing to common sense policies that
which is
everyone
why. Yeah. So this is why it's a pointless question.
Wait. It's not a pointless question. It's not a pointless question because there are policies that you would consider socialist. I think under your definition, no true Scotsman definition of socialist, that maybe the Democrats should appeal. So, for example, would you be against? Do you think, first of all, that a national healthcare service is a socialist policy?
No.
Okay, can you give an example of a socialist policy?
Things that involve taking away the means of production from private owners, from capital owners, and giving that so that the workers are exclusively the ones that are in control of the means of production.
So a single payer healthcare system, let's say a health insurance system, let's put it aside national healthcare, a single payer healthcare system that makes it illegal or outlaws private insurance, you would not say that's socialist?
If you're talking about the government owning everything from the top down, then including the hospitals, then theoretically you could call that socialist. Some people might.
Would you or would you? Sorry. Would you call that socialist? Would you, Stephen? Not Mike. Would you call that socialist? Yes.
I would call it a state-owned enterprise or state-owned enterprise a socialist. I mean, like technically not really, but sure, we can say that.
Wait. Is your answer that a single-payer system is not socialist? Is that what your answer is?
I wouldn't call it socialist, but if you wanted to, for the purpose of this conversation, sure.
No, I don't know. I want to know your opinion. So I'm asking your opinion. Your answer is no. Single payer is not socialist.
I don't think it's necessarily like a socialist policy. You could call it if you wanted to. You could, but if you wanted to,
I'm not asking if I wanted to. I could. I'm asking your opinion.
You're not asking my opinion. You wanted to give you a yes or no answer to an incredibly complicated question about a mode of economy that you just discovered 2 days ago. Jesus,
dipshit. I want your opinion. I want your opinion, dipshit.
You want a yes or no?
I want your opinion. I want your opinion.
You don't even know what the difference between a state-owned enterprise and what an actual different evolution of the mode of production even are.
Steven, do you think single payer? Steven, I'm not asking would someone else, could you? I'm asking you, Stephen Bonnell, do you consider single payer to be socialist?
I wouldn't call that socialist. No.
Shut up and let me
No.
talk.
Okay, so this is who's the no true Scotsman here? You guys were saying like the policy that most people who would absolutely consider to be socialist is not socialist, and so our working framework of socialism is only tankyism, only people who want to decommodify everything and have government ownership of everything, and it's preposterous. You're just not operating with the way people use those words.
That's great. That's literally not the argument, though. But if you wanted to argue that if we were to call it socialist and you wanted to socialize the healthcare system, the reason why you would be doing that wouldn't be because you're trying to appeal to socialists.
Weasel
you would
words,
say
Stephen.
that
Weasel words.
It's called politics. I know that it's hard
Let me
sometimes
try-
to keep up, but
if you
can I
want
finish
to-
my answer? Holy shit!
Yeah, go
there is
ahead,
a
Jeff.
difference between doing something by so for instance, I'm a free market capitalist, but that doesn't mean I oppose government intrusion into every single sector or even a government monopoly on things like, say, utilities, because there are some things that the free market doesn't solve for. To say that I don't think the free market solves for this, so we should have utility companies ran by the state, is not the same as saying I'm appealing to fucking socialists. That is such
I'm
a
not saying
naive
it's the
reading
same.
of politics.
I'm
Shut
not-
the fuck up and let me finish.
I'm not
so when
saying
you
it's-
ask me if a single payer system would be socialist, I might say, I guess you can consider it social if you want. The reason why I'm
might say.
advocating, though, for a single payer system isn't because I'm trying to appeal to socialists. It's because I think free market capitalism cannot solve
we're
the
not
problem.
talking about- so
Okay,
this is
don't
the
let me finish.
obfuscation.
Yes or no? Yes or no? What is a woman? What is a woman? If we're doing that with socialism, we can do that. Okay, go for it. Yeah.
So
What is a woman?
the obfuscation is the question.
There's
isn't
no obfuscation, to be clear. You're
the
just confused.
obfuscation-
Your confusion is not me
the
obfuscating.
The obfuscation is as follows, and I'll identify it. The question isn't whether or not the intention behind promoting single payer system is one way or another. We're not talking about the intention behind why you propose one policy or another. We're just asking in pure semantic terms, would most people call socialized medicine, socialized healthcare, would they call it a socialist policy? And your absurd deflection on that and saying, no, I would not call it socialist. I think just you're not using the terms
I
the
answer
way
the
people use
question
those
very
terms.
Here's
Yeah,
the question. Wait.
yeah.
Do you think that Hassan would call it socialism?
I don't. Wait, why is that relevant?
Why is the
think you would
largest
call it
left-wing
socialist.
streamer relevant to what mainstream thought is
What
amongst
a-
leftists in on the online media sphere?
So
Is that wait?
Hassan is
Did you just say that? Hold on,
so
wait.
the Communist
Did you just say
Manifesto-
that?
The Communist Manifesto, that is not authoritative on socialism, but Hassan
No,
Piker
it's not.
is.
The
Make that
Communist
make sense.
Manifesto is not
Yeah.
authoritative on
But
socialism.
Hassan Piker is. Hassan Piker, who you said is a
Yes,
fucking
the
limousine
current-
socialist. Yeah, he's definitive on that, but not the Communist Manifesto.
Hold on, I just want to be clear. You're telling me that something that was written almost 100 years ago is more authoritative on what modern-day socialists believe
Hassan
than
Piker?
what the
Maybe.
largest... Than what
Maybe.
some, okay, all right, well, I encourage you to do
But
more
Destiny-
research when it comes to
Destiny,
politics,
let me,
I guess.
Let me,
Yeah, I
you
don't know
guys
what
been
to
going back
say.
and forth. Let me step in here. So if we're appealing at that point though, Destiny, if we're appealing to what social people who call themselves socialists actually think, hey, the authoritative source of what socialism is the actually existing socialists today and what they believe in, right? Then in terms of whether or not we're like acquiescing or appealing to the socialist movement, then yeah, like the Bernie Sanders platform concessions of 2016 would count within that reasonable framework, that he was able to raise the minimum wage requirement of the Democratic Party National Committee. He was able to add in things like legalizing marijuana. And so we're hopping back and forth
That's really
between, oh, well,
inherently-
some socialists say socialism is
The
decommodification of
I
labor.
don't think that's all inherently socialism, though, right?
The difference
But
there is Bernie
Destiny-
Sanders is appealing to liberals. Liberals aren't trying to appeal to socialists.
Exactly. I thought he
right?
was
When
a
Bernie
liberal
Sanders
on that.
recommends the legalization of marijuana, that's not socialists, right? That's Bernie
Okay,
Sanders trying to
so-
do something in a liberal capitalist framework. He
Okay,
didn't say
so
the
do you say-
government needs
okay.
to grow weed. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so number one, I take it that you take back the thing you said in the beginning of this debate of when do socialists ever appeal to liberals by just now saying that that was an appeal to liberals.
100%.
to
Yeah.
add
No,
with
because I
your
said in the
fund.
beginning, I
Get
don't
fucking
really
cooked.
consider these people socialists. Follow the conversation, okay?
Okay, so now Bernie Sanders isn't a socialist.
I don't consider these. I did not say at the beginning of this
You said at the
conversation. I
very
don't consider these
beginning,
people real
Pisco.
socialists. No.
No, but Destiny, but what you did say was the actually existing contemporary socialists like Hassan are authoritative on what socialism is. And so if people like Bernie Sanders, and if I could
Bernie
just finish
Sanders
my
isn't?
point, if I could just finish my point, fuck's sake, if people like Bernie Sanders and people like Mamdani and people like AOC say things like publicly owned grocery stores and single-payer healthcare systems and the expansion of a public education are socialist policies, then we have to agree with them, or at least we have to say that they're a major influence on what it means to be a socialist policy under your own
Okay, no,
framework.
and I would like an opportunity to speak.
No, I want Destiny to really clarify that really quick. Just like, does that make
I
sense?
can't even
really
finish
don't,
saying
because
anything
then
without
I'm
somebody
gonna sit
screaming
here
at
with
me.
my
So.
hand on my dick and balls for the
But-
next
well,
10
without-
minutes. So I would
without
like an
Pisco,
opportunity to
it's
speak.
Hold on,
screaming
hold
at
on,
me.
hold
You
on,
guys can go
hold
back
on.
to yelling at
Stop.
each other.
Counterpoints, please. Destiny was asked a direct question. I'm going to let him give a
Okay, and then Connor. Okay, well,
You
like,
after.
Connor should go right after me. Okay, listen. I don't think that you look to the lawmakers in a democratic system to see who your ideological thought leaders are for certain movements in the United States necessarily. Okay, they're running in certain districts, and they're running under the confines of trying to operate within some electoral system so that they can get stuff done. I think that if you want to have this argument right now of like, does Bernie Sanders and AOC dictate what socialism is in the United States? Honestly, when you say it, maybe when Pisco said it, I'm not sure what planet he's on right now. Okay, but when you say it to Connor Boy, I think you genuinely believe that, and I don't think you're saying that like with stupidity, and I don't think you're saying that with malice, and I don't think you're a secret tanky or anything like that. Okay, I understand what you're saying there, and I want to agree with you, but the problem is that when I go outside, let me explain where the comments come from. The problem is that when we go outside of where Econoboy is, there is nobody in the United States media environment, okay, that like calls themselves like really like a socialist that would look to people like AOC and Bernie Sanders and say, oh yeah, those are socialists. They would call those people stepping stones in the radicalization funnel and good like liberal capitalists at the end of the day, which is why these are some people that get the most.
This is what you want. Fuck Hassan.
Hold on.
I want to turn.
Go ahead.
I want to turn because, frankly, you guys are talking past each other, okay? The reason why I've reiterated my definition of socialism as narrow and tailored is because I'm not doing no true Scotsman, okay? I'm telling you what a fucking Scotsman is. It's a Scottish person from fucking Scotland, okay? It's a dude. He wears a kilt. He has his fucking dick out all the time, all right? So the point is, I'm describing very specifically what it is. And the reason why I would be pissed about universal health care or high quality education being labeled socialist is, number one, I think most committed socialists who have read any books about socialism wouldn't agree with that definition. And the only way that I would stretch it is if you considered universal health care or universal access to health care as a part of the decommodification of basic human needs, which, by the way, I'm pretty sure was just food, water, and shelter. But what I'm saying is that the reason why I think that Econoboy and Pisco, whether they like it or not, are useful fucking idiots for committed socialists and tankies and communists is because they fucking muddy the definitions.